Here we are back again. Have some free time, an extreme heat wave outdoors, another excuse to stay indoors as if I actually need one. Might as well record a little audio for this picture book of a video and see where things take me. Spitballing, shooting from the hip, thinking out loud. All the normal things I do on a regular basis. Talking out loud to myself, wondering what's going on. Should I do another one of these? And the answer today was yes. Yes, it's extremely hot outside. Not sure what it is exactly right now, about in the 90s. So it was in the 90s early this morning. Had to break down and get another air conditioning unit because it was just too unbearable. I still have one of my old ones, but it just wasn't enough, so I bought another window unit. I didn't want to take a chance on another portable air conditioner that was going to break down in a year, which I still have my one. I may get fixed. But we shall see. The world is, I think, a very unpleasant place for the most part. I think many of the people in the world are very unpleasant to be around. I say this because I was in Walmart earlier today. I don't really like to go there, but if I need something cheap and somewhat fast, I go there. Although they've got a million cash registers, a million self-checkout aisles, and nobody working in any of them, like two or three lanes in the entire gigantic store open to check out. So if you just want one thing, you got to wait in a big long line just to check that one thing out because they're too cheap to pay people to work and to move people through the store. And of course, many of the people in the store take their sweet time. They start disputing prices. They finally get their checkout done and they're sitting there rearranging their wallet or their purse while other people are waiting to get checked out. They're either totally oblivious that there's other people waiting on them still, or they're doing it on purpose because why not? Because cranky old men like me might say something that can have an excuse to start a fight with them. That's my perception of it. That's what I've kind of gathered today. So I just sit there biting my tongue, trying to not go crazy, trying not to tell somebody to hurry the fuck up. You're not the only person here. Just an exercise in self-control for me anyway. But that's my little rant on people and their stupidity and their selfishness, which I count myself in those two categories too. I'm not the smartest in the world. I'm definitely not selfless. I'm not altruistic. or socially conscious. I don't really understand why people are. I guess we need people to be socially conscious, but I also believe that people need to learn to take care of themselves a little more, or maybe get the help from people that aren't being funded by taxpayers. But that's just me. I don't want to turn this into a political thing, but maybe it already is. We all, I guess, do our best to get along in this world, to get along in this existence, which we were all thrown into, as Heidegger would say, thrown into, no instructions, naked to the world. We have to pay to live, we have to get a job. And yes, we'd probably need tasks and things like that in life to do, but we really, when it comes down to it, though, it's just not that much fun in life to have to constantly struggle and try to make do and do things constantly because it just seems never ending struggle and work with nothing pleasurable, no relief or very little relief. And if you're like me, when you're in the relief or the day off work thing, you're worrying or thinking about the next time you have to go to work because this will all be over and you'll be back at it again. And then when you're at work, you're can't wait for the weekend, can't wait for the holiday, can't wait for vacation time, can't wait for retirement. And then when we get those things, we're still not happy or satisfied because they aren't the way we think we envisioned them to be in the first place. Others, much smarter than me, a long time ago figured this stuff out. So I'm just repeating. I'm just kept playing off what other people have already done and said, just like everybody else. But maybe I've got my own little unique twist on things that other people didn't quite put that way or didn't quite think of. But we'll see, I suppose, if anything I say here is worth repeating. It may die after I'm done with talking about it. People will be like, please, we don't need any more of this, and move on to something better, more substantial, more entertaining, like a dinosaur dog, stuff like that. Hopefully, the weather will not be quite so hot. I think it's supposed to cool down a little bit, but there's going to be some very high electric bills coming up the next month because it has been hot. And of course, whenever we have really hot weather, the environmentalist panicans come out lecturing us on global warming, lecturing us on why we're destroying everything, yet we're all still driving our cars, we're all still cranking our AC units, we're driving our gas cars, and the people that do have the electric cars now, they're actually not electric, they're battery operated. Electricity charges the batteries. And guess what provides the electricity? Where does it come from? Where does the power from electricity comes from? Well, the majority of it comes from coal. Yeah, there's solar panels and all that kind of stuff and wind turbines, but the majority of it is still fossil fuels. And, it just seems like we're sold all these different products and all these different things in life, and then the same people that sell them to us all of a sudden become virtuous and tell us that we're destroying everything and that we need to stop it. Well, sorry, but as long as the AC units are running, I'm going to run them, especially in this weather. I was watching some videos had to do with the recent World Cup. I guess they had games over here or something, but talking about Europeans and how they don't really have air conditioning over in Europe, or they don't use it much if they do have it. I've never been to Europe, so I don't know this, but one person was on there complaining in Germany that there's no air conditioning anywhere, and it's like 100-degree weather. Now, these Europeans, they have societies much like ours, not American per se, but they have all the modern conveniences that we have, and why not use some air conditioning when it's at least when it's really hot out? And some people were talking about how there are more heat-related deaths during these big, bad heat waves and stuff over in Europe than there are gun violence deaths over here, which, if that's true, I think is pretty telling. I haven't researched it. It's probably true, though. But you've got the technology, it's available, why not use it? Why not make people a little bit more comfortable in an uncomfortable existence? It's kind of silly. Of course, I'm guilty of similar thoughts, similar ways of thinking. Like, if I have something really bad, I don't want to go see a doctor, pain or something. Of course, a lot of my experience with doctors is I go for something, a pain here, a pain there, and they just tell me it's something that I already had diagnosed on YouTube anyway. And I've wasted a bunch of money and time, which is the main thing. The money part's not that big of a deal, depending on how much money, of course, but I don't like wasting my time sitting in a doctor's office waiting room, especially when I've had like a 2 o'clock appointment and at 2:45 I'm still not in there. And I realize they run late and they've got a big caseload, this and that, but they should also maybe warn you that, you know what, you've got a 2 o'clock appointment, but sometimes things happen and you may not get in there right at 2. You may be in there way later than that for whatever reason. Of course, I guess they don't really need to tell you that because most people expect it. And then you see that some people, you're in the waiting room waiting on your appointment. Some person walks in after you've been there a half an hour, and as soon as they don't even get sat down, and they're called back to the back. And after you've been there for a half an hour or more. But that doesn't happen too often because I don't go to the doctor that often. So there's that. Just a few things to complain about here and there. Maybe that's what I should rename this the Here's What I'm Complaining About Today channel. Here's something else that I'm just going to complain about and not really do anything about, because if I did that, I wouldn't have content for my channel. But it could be worse, I suppose. It can always be worse. That's one thing you'll find in life as you move along over the years, that you think things are bad now, they could get a whole lot worse. And there's plenty of people in the world and plenty of cases you can read about, plenty of stories you can read about of people that had fairly decent lives, were here doing just fine one day and totally screwed the next. Lives turned totally upside down from whatever reason: accidents, disease, major weather events, things like that, victims of crime. It's amazing, the films, because, nowadays we can make everything is almost filmed because everybody carries a little movie camera in their pocket everywhere they go, called a phone. That's part of the amazing, crazy, somewhat scary thing about this technology. When I grew up, here comes the old fart lecture. I can remember rotary dial phones. We had the old black wall phone and a cord. And if you wanted to make a private conversation, you had to kind of stretch the cord around a corner of a wall, or if you were lucky, maybe it stretched. They had some extra long ones, I think, after a while, but you didn't have that, couldn't go that far. And as a kid, especially if you're up to no good like I was from time to time growing up, you just would maybe have a phone conversation of, yeah, let's go meet somewhere and talk about this because my mom's right here doing the dishes or something. But, looking back on those phone conversations and no internet and all this and that to where it is now, yep, it's a totally different world. In my day, we didn't even have cable TV. Cable didn't really come around the areas I lived in till I was out of high school, I think. We had 3 or 4 local channels with rabbit ear TV on black and white TV. The old black and white TV we had got like just VHS channels only. I think after a while you could buy a UHF converter. Nobody probably even knows what I'm talking about when I say VHF and UHF. VHF were channels like 2 through, say, about 10 or 12 or something, and maybe up to 16, because that's what all the public TV channels were always on, was 16. And then channel 20, 19, 22, 45, and that. Those were the UHF. But a lot of the older TVs didn't have those. So you had to get a converter. Or you had an antenna on your roof. And some of these people started getting these big fancy antennas that were on. They were on like a tower, and they had a little dial thing on your TV that you could change the direction of it from inside your house and not have to climb up on the roof and adjust the antenna that way. If you've ever seen the Coen Brothers movie A Serious Man, there's a scene on there where when the main character gets up on this roof to adjust the TV antenna for his son, this was in the late 60s that took place. The son was in there watching F Troop, a show which today would not get made. There were so many stereotypes on that show. Pretty funny show, pretty wacky show, but it was back when people weren't quite so sensitive about everything. And everything wasn't a big crazy deal. And that if somebody got offended, it wasn't the end of the world. Back then, people would just shrug their shoulders or wave it off and move on about their day. Maybe not. They were probably the ones that did get offended, but their day hadn't come yet. This was before the era of political correctness, or now what they call wokeness, or the DEI mentality. Identity politics wasn't nearly as big back then. We knew that most people knew that they were just working class people doing the best they could. The government wasn't really as, people weren't as suspicious of it as they are now, which they have a right to be suspicious of it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be. And people, you watch the evening news and you believed what Walter Cronkite and some of these others said about the world, and that was that. And of course, you had newspapers, which they're still around, but barely. Newspapers were pretty cool, I thought. And not only that, back then, kids delivered papers. We had these things called paper routes. Of course, now the few that are delivered now are delivered by adults in cars. But we'd get out there and deliver them on our bicycles. Even in the crappy parts of town, kids were doing it. It was a job for children to earn some extra money. Now you have adults who it's a second job for them, getting up early in the morning delivering papers. Yes, I'm starting to feel like a real old fogey even just thinking about all this stuff. Yes, I'm on the eve of retirement. I've got about just over a little month or so to go. Yeah, almost 2 months actually, but not quite 2 months. It's amazing. Then I'll be moving into my last stages of life, retirement, becoming more and more decrepit every day, and eventually death. Leaving this plane of existence that none of us asked to be in. Oh, yeah, there's people that claim that, yeah, well, you chose your life, you chose your parents. How do you know that? You don't know that. Maybe we did on some level, I don't know, but as far as I know, I didn't choose anything, and I'm not going to sit there and blame myself and say, well, I chose this. Well, I choose. How do we even know we choose anything? I don't think we really do. And with that, you can have a nice day.